Hey everybody, welcome to Fantasy R&R. This is your host Ryan,
And I'm Rob.
and today we'll be giving our hot takes on the league's running backs just before week 2.
This is Fantasy with Rob and Ryan, Fantasy R&R.
All right, it's that time again. Just like we did our positional quarterback discussion, we're now going to be doing that with the running backs. Rob, how are you doing today?
Doing good, Ryan. How are you?
Excellent, good to hear from you. Why don't we start off with a mutually owned running back, Christian McCaffrey. We both need a big game from him tonight against the Texans on Thursday Night Football. What are you expecting from this guy, and is he living up to the expectation you had for him when you traded for him last year?
Wait, who does Christian McCaffrey play for? I'm just kidding. Yes, I believe that Christian McCaffrey looked pretty good last week with a little bit of a questionable at one point. I'm sure a lot of people, even when they were drafting him this year, as early as you had to draft him, are kind of holding their collective breaths each week, making sure that this guy doesn't go down the way he did last year. But so far, so good, knock on wood.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be a pretty safe situation for managers going forward. Guy looks like he's back to his normal self. He's not averaging as many yards per carry as we're used to seeing. I think that'll kind of balance out as the year goes on. He's obviously very involved in the passing game, and Darnold's going to be helping that going forward. We want to talk about another duo that one of those duos that always haunts us that we always talk about. Last year it was Tampa Bay. You were complaining about Fournette and Ronald Jones all the time.
Mm-hmm.
This year, I think people are going to have that same frustration with two under-owned running backs that they thought could give them some good value. Mark Ingram and David Johnson on the Texans. So speaking of this game, we know Mark Ingram from his Saints and Ravens days. This dude was a Heisman winner, I believe. David Johnson was only good in 1 year. I think it was 2015 or 16. That he just blew up as the fantasy running back to have and hasn't done anything since. David Johnson was involved in that trade, DeAndre Hopkins, and we're all kind of looking at David Johnson second in the pecking order now. What are your feelings about this backfield?
I'll make it quick. I don't want to have anything to do with either one of them going forward. So, you brought up Ronald Jones. He was part of that trade that I got McCaffrey in with Ronald Jones and Darren Waller. And I just don't really see anything in Houston that makes me confident that either one of these running backs going forward are going to do any type of damage that are going to win you week to week, to be honest. I think Ingram had that big week 1, but it was very inefficient. He touched the ball, I want to say, like 25, 27 times, and still only had like 83 yards. So not efficient whatsoever. And David Johnson, like you had said, had his one big year and really hasn't done much since. I think they're starting a rookie quarterback or a quarterback I've never heard of.
Yes, Davis Mills is going to be filling in for Tyrod, who's put on the IR.
Yeah, that's not very confident. I don't want either one of these running backs on my team. I don't even care how desperate I am.
Yeah, I think I'm feeling the same way. Let's move on to a running back I do want on my team, but is frustrating me and I'm sure other fantasy managers at the moment. We kind of expected this. So it's my own, impatience and greediness as a fantasy manager. We put the whip on these guys and we're like, get out there and get some points for us so we can jerk off our egos. Saquon Barkley on the Giants, obviously. Just gonna throw this out here. I just want to throw out some surprising statistics. This is through 2 games. Now, he didn't get a full workload, but we're talking 23 carries, 83 yards. So he's only averaging 3.6 yards per carry. I think he's ripped off half of those yards in one big run in one of those games, a 41-yard run. And then he's caught the ball 3 times for 13 yards, no TDs anywhere yet. So still not fully involved in the passing game. And on top of it, he's been limited in practice, and he's on the injury report again. And this might be indicating that they're still not ready to use him full-time in the next Giants game. What are you thinking about this situation? I know you're a huge Penn State fan, watched pretty much every one of his games. Is this the way you thought his career would go?
It's just worrisome. Giants haven't had an O-line, and when he was playing his college game in Penn State, they had the worst O-lines they pretty much ever had. And they went to, just to go back a little further, a 5-star quarterback in Christian Hackenberg, who he never had a college career simply because of this O-line. And Saquon Barkley had to do a lot of shifty work, if you will. Get swifty with it, and put a lot of wear and tear and a lot of miles on those legs. And his NFL, his 3rd year, I want to say, in the league, it has more or less mimicked the wear and tear that's happening. And I agree with you. I don't think the Giants are ready to, let him go full blast, full Saquon for 100%. And for fantasy owners, it's kind of concerning so far. But I would hate to give up hope on somebody with such a high pedigree.
And I would definitely not give up hope. I mean, he's one of those guys. I think what really is I think he needs to be in your lineup every week, because at some point they're going to let him loose, and you're going to see a change in the production just because of how talented he is. Now, some of the coaching and the play calling has been bad. They're sending Saquon. Oh, we got hot takes coming in. They're sending Saquon right up the middle on HB draws and stuff like that. And I mean, this guy is a lateral runner. We talked about that in the past. But guys, just stay patient with Saquon. He's a generational talent. Yep. We don't know how much this injury really affected him until they tell us he's supposed to be back at full health. So let's move on. Speaking of the miles put on somebody's body, we're talking about Miles Sanders now. You own him. I'm in a pretty non-competitive random Yahoo league where I have him and got good value on him in the draft. It still kind of seems like the same old Miles Sanders situation that we saw last year, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's getting a lot of these touchdowns vultured from him. Yeah, even I recall from the last podcast we had, we were talking about Eagles San Francisco, being the game of the week. I think it lived up to that hype. But I think the Eagles are still kind of trying to find their identity a little bit. I felt like they were kind of scrambling in that game, hence why a lot of Eagles players, I felt like, kind of didn't have as good of a week one as they did a week two. But they were playing a pretty stout 49ers defense. It'll be interesting to see what they do Monday night against Dallas. But Miles Sanders is another guy. I'm not taking him out of the lineup because I think all it takes is one game, and then it's like, okay, back to normalcy. So...
yeah, and I do agree. I mean, we're talking about a guy who's like putting up more numbers than Saquon is right now. 28 carries, 129 yards. He's averaging 4.6 YPC. That's fantastic. And he's also involved in the passing game. 5 receptions on the year, 43 yards. We still have yet, like you said, though, to see Sanders get a touchdown. We're seeing Kenneth Gainwell, the rookie, kind of come in and out of the game. So, I mean, that's there. But moving on a little bit, let's talk about real quick Tyson Williams and Latavius Murray and what's going on over there on the Ravens with their slew of injuries. Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins. We've seen Le'Veon Bell involved in the running back talks. We've seen Devontae Freeman get brought up from the practice squad, and we've seen Latavius Murray there as well. There's been other injuries with Justice Hill. Tyson Williams looks like he's been taking over fairly well, but he's having the same problem. Latavius Murray is vulturing a lot of his touchdowns and unfortunately has more rushing yards than him, albeit we're seeing Tyson involved more in the pass game right now. So everybody just kind of keep your eye on that situation. Right now I've got Tyson Williams. I'm just kind of keeping him on my bench. I'm pretty running back heavy with Jonathan Taylor, Najee Harris, and Damian Harris and guys like that. So until I'm really hard-pressed for somebody at the position, I'm just going to continue to monitor that situation. But I want you to talk about James Robinson real quick. Not quite what we saw last year. I admitted that maybe I was wrong about him, and he was a pretty good running back about week 8 through the season last season, but now we're seeing a standstill. Now, this is just completely due to our offensive line, which is pretty much the same from last year, or do you see some holes in Urban Meyer's game planning?
No, I think it just boils down to O-line again. I mean, it's pathetic, for lack of a better term, and I feel like that's actually a pretty good term for it. Jaguars O-line looks horrific, and there's, again, going back to the quarterback podcast that we did, a lot of people are like, oh, God, Trevor Lawrence looks terrible. The guy has no time to throw. If you have no time to throw, you have no time to run. And that has what's been essentially hindering James Robinson this whole time. Will it be this year? I don't know, but I do not think James Robinson will hit the numbers that he did last year, solely because, like the Eagles last week, the Jaguars are going to have this problem the whole year, and they're trying to find their identity. It'll come, I really do, and I think James Robinson will be fine, but I think for a guy who didn't go drafted last year, you had to draft James Robinson, second, third round this year? And for an offense that, a whole new scheme of play calling out in Jacksonville right now, James Robinson is a bit of a lost cause. But again, do you bench James Robinson? Would you, if you have him on your team, would you bench him?
I guess if you could potentially bench him if we're talking about the next guy, we're bring up Devin Singletary. If you got both these guys in your team and you thought you were weak at running back because you had Singletary and you were using Robinson as your RB1, it might be time to switch over to Singletary. This guy all of a sudden is averaging 6.5 yards a carry and has a touchdown on the season. And I mean, Zach Moss is still getting used in and out, but he's also fumbled. And we're starting to see Singletary just dominate those touches. It's one of those situations where it feels like Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones of last year, but I really do think maybe Robinson, if you're using him as your RB1 and you've got someone else, like let's say you got Kamara and Robinson, and then you got Singletary as your late bench backup, you probably put Singletary in over Robinson. And I mean, that's just the way I feel right now. Zach Moss has probably got to stay on a lot of people's benches, and Singletary should be the guy that's in there. A lot like what we're seeing with Connor and Edmonds. I mean, a lot of people did predict James Conner, to take a back seat to Chase Edmonds, and Edmonds would be more involved in the passing game. But even that situation over there, it's kind of got that muddied water feel where, I mean, we've seen almost no production out of James Conner, for example, and Chase Edmonds, he's taken over all of reception work over there in Arizona. So, I mean, basically with Moss and Singletary having their situation, we're watching Chase Edmonds kind of dominate in the same way. I mean, do you think that, James Conner, it's just time to drop him if you got him on a team?
I'd still hold on to him. I mean, if, Edmonds goes down, Conner clearly is going to be the man in Arizona, and the offense has been just churning out touchdowns. But this is what I'm going to say about both of these situations, even the Tyson Williams, Latavius Murray, the thing that we're witnessing here in Philly. There's something you always say in fantasy. It's like coaches don't give a shit about fantasy teams, and I just feel like a lot of NFL teams are going back to this running back committee. I mean, even you're looking there in Buffalo, Moss missed the first game, and then week 2, he vultures 2 touchdowns from Singletary from the goal line. Even with that fumble, they let him get that second touchdown, and you're just like, oh boy, here we go. It's just going to be a split down the middle going forward. Like I really believe that's what we're seeing, an evolution of the game, which is just history repeating itself. I mean, you remember in Jacksonville, Fred Taylor and our boy Mojo.
Maurice.
It's just like we're going back to that committee. We're saving these legs, and then whoever's got kind of the hot hand come fourth quarter with 5 minutes left, they're going all in on that one running back. So I think we were kind of talking about this once before about fantasy drafts. Like it's hard to say who is a viable first rounder running back these days because there's somebody behind him.
Yeah, I mean, there's only so many on the
stats from him.
Yeah, and that's actually, now you bring it up, that's why so many people invest their first pick in a guy like Alvin Kamara, or, for example, the next guy we'll talk about real quick, Dalvin Cook, who has taken 42 carries already this season, averaging 4.6 YPC. He's got himself a touchdown. He's involved in the passing game. He's the man there. We know he will be. And that's why it's so important to have a handcuff like Alexander Madison, because Dalvin Cook, non-participant at practice yesterday. We don't know if he's going to play Sunday. If you don't have Alexander Madison, you have space on your bench, you probably want to go stash him, because that's a situation that's real clear-cut with 2 good running backs. Madison comes in, he's going to perform. We didn't know what was going to happen with like the 49ers, for example, after Mostert, because they've got so many options all the time. You don't know if each guy is really going to be the guy. But I mean, Madison, he could put up one of those Mike Davis type seasons like last year when he came in from McCaffrey. Sure. He just got to get the chance to play. So that's a totally different situation altogether. Now, over on the Raiders, Josh Jacobs, I got to say, this was probably the poorest return value so far of the draft. If you were in your fantasy draft, you probably had to go after Josh Jacobs 3rd round, and you're not getting any return value for it at the moment, and you're getting even worse return value from guys like Peyton Barber and Kenyon Drake. Yeah. Did I get that right? I think Barber's on the Raiders, but yeah, it's Josh Jacobs probably sitting on people's benches or in the IR slot last week. and now we don't think he's going to play week 3. It's just a bad situation, and I sometimes feel like this could happen to Chris Carson, a guy I really like. I think he's an underrated running back, but I mean, a lot of people probably feel like he's an injury risk because every year he goes down for a couple of games, it seems like. I mean, what do you think about that situation there?
No, I completely agree. I mean, it just, and again, another instance of somebody just a little too much mileage on the legs. And what did they say the average shelf life of a running back is these days? 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, it's like 4 years.
Yeah.
4 years, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just so hard to gauge, man. I mean, like James Conner was going in the first couple rounds just not even, a year or two ago, and now this year I think I got him in the 8th, 10th round, and he's not even doing anything. Now, mind you, we're only even in 2 weeks. And that's why I say I'd be so hesitant to drop almost any running back at this point, because you just don't know when they're going to get their time to shine.
Yeah, it's totally true. I mean, so hopefully Carson doesn't go down. Other than that, I mean, he's usually a solid fantasy option. I mean, everyone's kind of got a different feel this year. The running backs, I mean, we talked about this. I don't know if I'd spend my high picks going after running backs anymore. Get your high return receivers and tight ends. You love going after Kelsey first. I like that strategy lately. You know he's going to be just as valuable as any running back or wide receiver in the league. And, then you can go and get your value later. Like Cam Akers is getting traded in leagues, you're telling me a lot. What is going on there? I mean, can everybody just use their IR slot for a little while? I mean, it seems silly to me to start shipping this guy off when he was poised for such a breakout year. He could come back and be the guy, right?
Especially in full-blown dynasty leagues. I mean, I'd be buying him everywhere. It sucks to see it happen, but he is young enough. It's kind of one of those situations. And I mean, after what he showed last year in the last 4 to 5 games, the dude deserved to have been the starting running back all last year. It didn't happen. Then he got his time to shine. It panned out. I mean, in our ESPN league, I held on to him all year and just sat there and rotted on my bench until finally, I believe it was that Patriots game where he ran for over like 100 yards. I was like, here we go.
Yeah, and you were poised to start him.
Yeah, I had to start him in, I think, both my leagues, actually. I was just like, well, thank God I did. But I wouldn't, 1 year league, sure. I mean, whatever, drop him. But, if you're in a dynasty, I say buy him everywhere. Buy him everywhere. And just put him on the IR slot, let him rot.
I completely agree. I mean, right now in ESPN, 3.5% rostered for Cam Akers. I mean, guys, if you got an IR slot, go out there and stick him on. Zeke and Pollard here. I think you can back me up on this. I don't think we talk a whole lot on the podcast. Maybe we mentioned the Pollard thing from last year when I was like, hey, you might want to go out and get this guy because Zeke is out. We know, and I've said this, and you agree, and Pollard is a talented running back.
Oh, yeah.
And he should be rostered, but he mostly needs to be rostered like a Dalvin Cook Madison situation where he was there to handcuff you owning Ezekiel Elliott. Ezekiel Elliott does not look the same as years past, a whole lot like David Johnson, but Zeke is still producing. Pollard, however, is out-producing. What are we going to see here? Is this just going to be muddied water for the whole season, or do you think Pollard takes over at some point?
Dallas being Dallas and them paying as much money as they did for Zeke, there's no way they're ever going to bench that guy. The problem is, and just being honest, especially from this last game that I saw, Tony Pollard looks like the better running back of the two. In my honest opinion, from the years of me watching football, I'm like, man, this guy, and I keep seeing the word, but it's electric. Like, the way the guy runs, I'm like, holy crap, man. Like, dude has no fear. He has great legs. And it just has a great awareness. Whereas Zeke, I just feel like
he does have great legs.
I think I'm so used to seeing Zeke just run up right up the middle. If he gets a hole, haha, it's awesome, and he's good. Tony Pollard, I feel like, can make he can break the tackles and he can make people miss. Like, that's what you want out of a running back. And I don't know, man. I mean, I would scoop up Tony Pollard anywhere. I think he's a pretty strong flex position going forward.
Yeah, and it might be a little bit harder. Tony Pollard has gotten a little more popular over the years, 60% rostered in ESPN leagues, but that leaves 40% of leagues with this guy just sitting out there, so maybe go after him if you can. Everybody, that was our positional discussion on running backs. Next time we are going to hit the wide receivers. Until then, this was Fantasy R&R with Rob and Ryan. We will see you next time.